This is Capstone number 3 with Christian, Brian, and Joe, and we're going to be talking about the evidence for God from science. Let's get started with Christian.
All right, yeah. So the main question here is like whether science actually like points towards the existence of God or not. And like I think a lot of people think like science and religion are like totally opposite. Like if you were to believe in one but you can't believe in the other one type of thing. But when we started talking about like philosophers like St. Thomas Aquinas, like the idea was that like studying the real world could actually help people understand God better. And Aquinas like believed that if we looked at the universe and used logic, then like we could like see clues that point toward like a creator. And like in this class, like in Mr. Webb's class, like we talked about like it's called a primary reality, and like which is basically like the external world that we can observe with science and evidence is like what the primary reality is, right? And like when scientists study things like the Big Bang or like the beginning of the universe and like the law of physics, like they're studying like that reality. Um, but like what's interesting is that like some of the biggest discoveries in science like actually raise more questions about like why like the universe actually exists at all. And like things like the Big Bang and the BVG theorem and the fine tuning of the universe, like they recommend or they suggest that like the universe may not just be some random like accident. Like there was a meaning behind all of this. Like someone or something created all of this. And so instead of science getting rid of the idea of God, in some ways it like actually opens the door to that possibility of God creating it all. So like science supports God and the start of the creation.
Yeah, all right. So I'll talk about the Big Bang. The Big Bang scientifically took proof 13.8 billion years ago. And that's pretty much just like saying like the world was in like a super small circle, and then
Yeah.
it got like really, really hot, and then it pretty much just like expanded out
Yeah.
into the rest of the rest, and the distribution of the elements support this. Uh,
Mhm.
so like the Big Bang doesn't just talk about how it got expanded; it also talks about how like space and time were created.
Yeah.
And like this pretty much means that the universe is not internally in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, so building off what Brian said about the Big Bang, astronomers they discovered that the galaxies are actually moving further and further away from us. So if the galaxies are moving further away from us and they're light years ahead of us, then that ultimately suggests that at some point in time that these we it was all once, it was all
Yeah.
one little dot. And then over time it rapidly started to expand over billions and millions of years. So it's suggesting that there was a start, like the the dot was the start, and then over
Right.
time it gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger until what we
Yeah.
have now, and the Earth and the things that we have in this universe today.
When you think about like everything we know, like space, time, matter, energy, like it all had like a starting point. So like when you think about that, like logically, like it raises the question of like what caused the universe to begin in the first place, and like something like can't create itself. So whatever caused the universe would have to exit outside of time and space. And like that idea actually lines up pretty closely with like Aquinas' argument about a first cause, which he believed was God. And the really interesting thing was like the mathematical idea, and like you said, the BVG theorem, which was it was developed by psychists.
About the Borg, Guth, and Vilenkin universe proof. So, which it states that any universe, or that the universe has been expanding on average throughout human history, and it cannot have an infinite past. So basically, the Hubble expansion rate, it shows that it is greater than zero. It's never zero. It's never going to be less than zero. The world's not contracting. It's actually expanding. So this actually tells us that the world must have a beginning.
Yeah.
Um, and this is shown with the bouncing universe. It has an expansion rate, and if it were eternal in the past, it would require an infinite fine tuning. So it can't be. It has to have a higher dimensional space, and it has to be expanding at a rapid rate.
Yeah, and like some like scientists even thought that like that if there were like multiple universes or like a multiverse that like maybe the universe could exist forever, but like the BVG theorem like actually shows that many multiverse like models would still need a beginning, so that's why like the whole multiverse talk we had in class, it was all kind of like only if the BVG theorem actually shows.
Yeah. All right. Now let's talk about the multiverse theory. So the multiverse theory is pretty much just like a bunch of different universes that like we haven't known yet, and
Yeah.
like scientists cannot prove them because like we can't go past ours.
Yeah.
So like we don't know what's really out there, if you want to like say it like that.
Yeah.
The multiverse does not solve this problem. So there's no observational proof for the other ones. And another thing is, if the multiverse were to exist, there is no current exists. The entire system of the universe would still require the laws to
Yeah.
generate them. This kind of ties into the BVG theorem because
Yeah.
the BGV theorem suggests that a multiverse would still require a start. So, like, it doesn't
Right.
make sense.
We touched on the multiverse theory, but we never really fully went in depth. So I'm gonna go a little bit in depth here about like how some scientists try to explain like the multiverse theory, and that's like that is like the idea that our like universe might not be the only one that exists. And I remember giving Mr. Webb the reference of like if there was like an upside down, like how is that possible? Like there could be tons or even an infinite number of universes out there and we have no clue. But with all different laws and physics and we have no clue what those could be. But like if that were true, then it wouldn't be surprising that at least one universe happens to have like the right conditions for life. Like if you think that there's many multi-universes and multiverses, then there has to be somewhere out there that has like somewhere where humans could also live. And but there are still some like problems with that explanation. And like right now there's obviously no direct evidence that like those universes could actually exist. It's more of like a theoretical idea. But even if there were a multiverse, like it still doesn't explain why the multiverse exists in the first place, and that means the question about like the ultimate cause of everything is still there. And I mean, my opinion, I mean, because of all of that, like some people think the multiverse theory doesn't completely solve and might like actually make things more complicated.
Yeah, so building off that, the multiverse, it's unfalsifiable, meaning like you can't prove that it's correct, you can't prove that it's wrong, but it violates Occam's razor, which basically
Yeah.
states that it's when you compare two theories, and you usually tend to prefer the one that's simpler and has fewer ideas, like the Big Bang. That one's a little bit easier to understand, whether it's understanding how small something is and how it expands into the world we have today. But then you get the multi-universe. It's something we've never seen. We've never seen the Big Bang, but you can't. It's very hard and very difficult, and it's very
Yeah.
unlikely to be able to have any sort of evidence for another multiverse for anything in this world, which then violates Occam's razor.
Well, I think we can kind of move on to like the fine tuning aspect, which is another really interesting idea, the fine tuning problem. And like scientists have discovered that the universe has like certain physical constants. And like the strength of gravity and the forces that like hold atoms together, right? So like the crazy part is that like these numbers have to be extremely specific for life to exist. And if gravity were even like a tiny bit stronger or weaker, stars and planets might have never formed properly. So like we got super lucky on how the universe was formed as a complete perfect universe where multiple things can be going on at a time without like catastrophic things happening, like asteroids coming from Saturn and Saturn hooking them up in the belt of the rings around the planet. Like Earth would probably be destroyed by now. So a bunch of things like that play into effect. And the same goes for like constants in physics, right? And like if they were slightly different, the universe could collapse and expand, and or too quickly expand, or never allow life to even develop in the first place. So like when scientists look at that, like they realize that like the chances of all these lining up perfectly by accident are incredibly small, but somehow it happened. And that like doesn't automatically prove it's God, but like what else could it really be? It definitely makes up the question like whether the universe was designed intentionally, and like from say like a Mr. Webb perspective, like fine tuning can look like evidence of an intelligent creator being behind the universes, and that's kind of like the whole